I am back. You are comfortably zoned in the zone with me, Ralph Zeke Tycho, from Alameda, California. Ventured into the city today, the big city of San Francisco, to meet the producer, Paulie B. How are you?
Very well. Good to see you, Zig. I'm glad to be in the zone with you today.
It's always nice when we get together for whatever reason.
Absolutely, and lots of stuff happening over the weekend in sports, right? So,
Oh, the first thing I have to mention is that Met icon, New York Met icon, Jerry Grody, the best catcher the Mets ever had, passed away this weekend. And in the second segment, Glenn Hirsch and Steve Goldleaf are going to commiserate with me about his passing, what it means. Um, in addition to that, Glenn Hirsch is a fellow comedian.
oh, they're cool. Right on. So we'll be able to talk shop, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Right on.
That, under the circumstances, we'll make the best of it, as we always do. In the first segment, Jerry Feidelberg is here. And Jerry, welcome back again. We are going to talk about the announcement that the A's made very recently that they're going to play the first 2 years, the next 2 years, in Sacramento. And they won't be the Sacramento A's, they won't be the Oakland A's, they'll just be named the Athletics or the A's, whatever they're going to call themselves. But this is until the stadium in Las Vegas is complete and ready to go. Two things. First of all, there are no shovels in the ground. We don't know if that deal will ever come up. And I was telling Paulie that the main buggaloo, or whatever the hell it is, in their situation is the teacher union in Las Vegas says, it may not be a good idea to put in thousands, millions of dollars into a new stadium. It may be better to put that money into education. Now, just how crazy is that? Education over baseball? Jerry, what in the hell is going on?
Well, first of all, Ralph, I'd like to thank you and Paul for having me back on the show. Always enjoying the podcast with you. And I'd like to have a shout out to the basketball tournament over the weekend, where the University of South Carolina women won the national championship for the second year in a row, and to the University of Connecticut Huskies that demonstrated last night that they are the best team in college basketball this year, with a resounding win over the Boilermakers from Purdue.
Purdue, Jerry, when you say Purdue, do you think automatically of Rick Mount, the most the most famous player that I can think of that came out of Purdue back when I was a kid?
No, I don't think of Rick Mount at all.
Okay.
I was thinking of my son-in-law's daughter, who did her undergraduate work at Purdue, and then got her doctor of veterinary medicine degree from the University of Purdue, from Purdue University. So I was pulling for Purdue, and then that was on one side of the family. And then my cousin, who lives in Hartford, Connecticut, who he was rooting for, the University of Connecticut. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so we had a win in the family, no matter which way it went.
Okay.
But it was amazing to see this guy Eddie, who poured in 37'4", poured in 37 points for Purdue. What a player! And the Yukon guys had a 7'2" center. I'm sure if they go into the draft, they're going to be in the NBA next year. But let's get back. Let's get back to the sad news that the A's are going to Sacramento for 3 or more years until the stadium is built in Las Vegas. The A's met with the city of Oakland officials last Tuesday, and in my mind, the city of Oakland made 3 demands that just were not gonna fly. One is that they wanted Major League Baseball to grant them an expansion team, to promise them an expansion team. They're not going to do that. The second thing is that the city of Oakland wanted to have the trademark on the Oakland A's, and all the history that went with the A's. They wanted to keep it like the Cleveland Browns did when Art Modell took the team to Baltimore. That wasn't going to happen either. And the third thing is that they wanted $97 million, but they were going to give the A's 3 to 5 years on the lease, so that they could stay here until the stadium was built. And the A's were not going to pay that money. The city dropped it to $60 million, but you could tell that was not going to be a satisfactory offer. So the next day they went to Sacramento and they met with Sacramento officials, not officials. They met with Vivek Ranadive, who started his ownership, his road to ownership of the Sacramento Kings. He was a minority partner in the Golden State Warriors, and he had to sell that portion of his ownership when he took over the Kings a few years ago. Ranadive built the stadium, Golden One Stadium in Sacramento, which has been a success, and he owned the River Cats. And as you know, years ago, the A's used to have their minor league team in Sacramento, and then under the new ownership under Ranadive, the San Francisco Giants now have their minor league team in Sacramento.
Where would they go with a minor league team if the A's become Sacramentoites?
Well, they're going to have to make adjustments, and the utter nonsense that's going on is that they say, well, if there's conflicts in the schedule, the River Cats may play their games at the Oakland Coliseum. It just blows my mind.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. The A's, the major league team, will be playing in a 10,000-seat stadium, and the minor league team of the Giants will be playing at the Oakland Coliseum. Now, how does the Giants right to refusal go? Who knows? That's nuts. You were blaming Manfred. Do you think that it could have turned out differently under different leadership in baseball?
Yeah, exactly. Manfred put the pressure on John Fisher to get a stadium, to build it to major league standards. I did a little research on the issue of small market team. Is Oakland a small market team? The answer is no. They're in a large market.
Absolutely.
But I did some research. In 1968, when the A's moved here, their first season here, they drew a little over 837,000 people. You know what the league average was that year? 1.1 million. So they weren't too far off.
Mm-hmm.
In 1973, they won the American League Championship and the World Series that year.
Oh, I know. I'm a Met fan.
They drew 1 million. The average they drew over 1 million people. The league average was 1.1 million. That's not too bad. But things changed in 1977. Charlie Finley sold off his players, They drew 495,000. The league average is 1.4. So you can see that the people the people got angry with what Charlie Finley did, and they didn't show up. 1979, they drew 306,000 people, but they had a terrible team. They lost 100 games that year. But Billy Martin was hired by the team. 1981, they drew 1.3 million. The league average was 1 million, but you got to remember that was a strike year. So they did better than the league, 1.3. In 82, 1.7, league 1.6, doing fine. 83, 1.3, league 1.7. But you see, in 1981, Walter Haas took over ownership of the team. In 1986, the White Sox fired Tony La Russa, and he came to manage the A's. And in '86, they had Jose Canseco, who was Rookie of the Year. 1987, Mark McGwire was Rookie of the Year. The A's attendance went up to 1.67 million. The league was 1.9. In '88, they won they won the American League Championship. They drew 2.28. League was 2.03. 89, 2.66. 90, 2.9 million. 91, 2.7. 92, 2.5. 93. Now 93 they started on the downside, and they were 2.0, 2.0. And 94 to 98 they had losing teams, and so their attendance wasn't too good, but was average about 1.2. The league was 2.3. So if you have a good team, you're going to put more people in. If you have a bad team, you're not going to draw.
It's not that simple with the A's. When the Raiders tried to come back, they changed that stadium dramatically, and they made an intimate, beautiful view stadium into a mausoleum, a football stadium, and it never took with the baseball fans.
Yeah, the stadium was originally built for the Raiders, and it opened up, I think, in 1966. And the Raiders play here, and they had great success here. But the stadium only held 51,000 people for football, and the fans that came were devoted fans. They were loud. It was raucous. And teams didn't like to come here because the fans were so good. On the other side of the bay, back in the 70s, the 49ers weren't doing very well. They were playing in Candlestick Park. People would go there, but they didn't have the same passion as the Raider fans did. So it was a totally different experience in the two stadiums. I started going to Niner games in 1980 or 1981, and we had season tickets. But at that time, the 49er fortunes were changing as Joe Montana started with the team, I think, in '79, and then '81 they went to the Super Bowl. So, but nonetheless, yes, you're absolutely correct. The configuration of the stadium, with what they call Mount Davis, the county I think the county and the city took out bonds to pay for them, and they're still paying. They're still paying for them right now. They still owe some money on that thing, and they're not. It's just a bad deal for both the city and the county. Apparently,
the fans too. How about that?
And the fans, before Mount Davis was built, the fans could talk to Ricky Henderson, they could talk to Dave Henderson, they could talk to Canseco, because they were on top of the field. And now, if you look at the stadium, fans in left field, they're looking at the third base. Look at the fans in the third base stand, and if you're in right field, you're looking at the fans in the right field seats. It's just a tough configuration out in the outfield, and you're up much higher, and you just don't have the same fan experience. Although over the years, the fans in right field have made a wonderful place to go. They were really into it. They had the flags out. They had all kinds of things. When Hideki Matsui was here late in his career, it was known as Matsui Land. Uh, Balfour, the reliever, they used to get ramped up when he came into the game. And back in those days, but the thing is, the point I'm trying to make is, if you put a winning team in and you have an owner that's interested in the team and shows that that the owner wants to be here and wants to make it a great fan experience, they can draw 2 million people a year, and it can be done.
What are the odds of Vegas working out for them?
Well, on opening night, I was at the game. I spoke to one of the people that does some work work for the A's, and actually works for the A's and does some broadcasting for the A's. He said that even if that referendum does pass, they think that the A's will be going to Las Vegas. And I mean, if somehow that referendum does pass and gives the A's problems, they'll go somewhere else. They're not coming back to Oakland. Fisher believes is a real estate guy. He wants to develop property. He's just not interested in Oakland as doing that big project that he had. You know, Mr. Fisher has owned the team since 2005. I've never seen him at the ballpark. I wouldn't know who he is. I did meet Lou Wolf several times over the years. He was here more than, and he lives in L.A. and he was here more than Mr. Fisher, and he would talk to the press. But Mr. Fisher doesn't want to know anybody, and they had over the years. This is unbelievable. They've had 4 sites in the Bay Area that they looked at over the years, and all 4 of them have fallen through. Their first move was to San Jose, but as you know, when Walter Haas was here and Bob Lurie owned the Giants, and the Giants they had bad teams, and the attendance at Candlestick Park was awful, and it was just a tough place you couldn't draw at night because you had the weather was
horrible wind.
The wind, the cold, it just wasn't a great place to watch a ball game. And they had referendums in San Jose. I think they had 3 or 4 different referendums here in San Francisco to get public money to support a private enterprise, and all 4 of the referendums failed. It takes a lot of chutzpah. You're running a private operation. You're making money, and you're asking the public to subsidize building you a home. That's ludicrous.
Right.
But the Giants did it with private financing. They built a beautiful ballpark at Third and
King
Street. Third and King, and it's just been. And then they got good teams, and they went to the World Series, won 3 World Series in 5 years, and they've had a wonderful experience there. And the A's at the Coliseum, in a stadium that wasn't great for football, it was terrible for baseball. They did need a new home, and then it got old. The stadium's almost 60 years old, and things wear out, and they've had a lot of bad experiences there with the plumbing. When Charlie Finley was here, he didn't put a dime into improving the scoreboard. When Walter Haas took over, he improved the sound in the stadium. They have beautiful scoreboards in the stadium now. They've done they did whatever they could to make it a fun experience.
Jerry, you are an encyclopedia of times and dates and putting all this together. We are so pleased to have you as a guest on a regular basis. It's not just baseball you're an expert at. We talked in one show about the antitrust thing with Alioto that you had. Remember, RDI, we're talking to the Pharmacist of the Year in California, 1995, was it?
Yeah, 1995. We took on the drug manufacturers for their multi-tier prescription schemes that they had, and we got our group led by Fred Mayer, who was a colleague of mine, and a public service attorney, Lynn Carmen, and of course with Joe Aliotto and others. We filed the first lawsuit in the country challenging these pricing schemes, and that was in 1993, and took 7 years to get it settled. But when the dust settled, we got the largest private action, antitrust action in the country, in American antitrust history. We got a judgment of $725 million, almost $750 million for 40,000 pharmacies across the country.
Well, all that, Jerry, and you're a terrific breeder. Your daughter is a judge.
Thank you. Yeah, my daughter is a judge in Contra Costa County. She was appointed to the bench by Gavin Newsom 2 years ago, and she had been a deputy DA in LA County for over 10 years prosecuting murder cases, and she now is she always wanted to be a judge, and she's living her dream.
Well, maybe she can convict Trump someday.
That would be fine.
That would be fine.
Don't get me started into politics today.
Well, we've talked a lot of politics over the years, and we always take odds about stuff. What are the odds of him going to jail, do you think?
Well, it's hard to predict what juries are going to do, but I'll give you a little hint. He is desperate not to go on trial next Monday in Manhattan. He wants to push it back past the election because if he should somehow win the election, he
can pardon everybody, including himself.
Well, he can't pardon himself, but he can stop the Justice Department from pursuing the cases in D.C. and Florida. In the state cases in Georgia and New York, he can't do that. He can't be pardoned. So the only hope would be to get him convicted while he's president. Should he be elected president in those two venues? But it's better to get him on the spot next week in New York. And they're trying all kinds of shenanigans to delay it. Yesterday, he filed suit against the judge, and it went to the appeals court. They dismissed it. God knows what he's going to do today. He's violated the gag order. He's going after Judge Merchan's daughter, who has nothing to do with the case. But it's just, it's not. It might be witness intimidation.
Can they jail him for doing that?
Yeah, they could. They could. If it were you or me or anybody else, we'd be in the pokey. We wouldn't be out on bail. We'd be in the pokey. But here's what's going to happen. Why he's deathly afraid of Manhattan. In the Florida case that Judge Cannon has in that county, Trump won in 2020. Got a little over 50% of the vote in that county. In Manhattan, he got 11% of the vote. So he's deathly afraid of the people in Manhattan that they're going to throw him in the pokey, and that's where he belongs.
Let me ask you this. What is the strategy, not just for Trump, but for anyone in getting on the bad side of the judge who could convict you, add to the sentence? They're humans and they have to be influenced. Why do that? Why? I mean, just in general, let alone Trump.
I think he's laying the groundwork for an insanity plea. That's what I think he's doing.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, that's the only tactic there is.
Is that crazy or what?
Right? Because then they're going to go, oh, his doctor's going to have to be, well, Mr. Trump can't go on trial. He's blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And they'll cite those things where he goes bing, 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 bing. And then they'll go, yep.
Well,
gone.
I thought he's already proven insanity. I didn't think he'd have to do it again.
Well, at least the padded room will have the presidential seal.
Right. Oh, that's good. That's
so
good.
That's nice.
And the gold toilet in a cell just doesn't make it for me. I want.
They'll move the gold crapper into the rubber cell phone.
Okay, that's good. Just keep them happy.
Well, you brought up insanity. Some people are questioning whether he has dementia because he's he had the thing with where he calls out Nikki Haley instead of Nancy Pelosi, and he's making these blunders on these speech. Now, maybe intentional to create the impression that he's got dementia. Who knows? But this guy, here it is, 8 years after he got elected in 2016, with all the stuff that's come out about him and everything else, there is still 35% of the people still believe in him. They think he's wonderful. They think he's sent here by God. And I'm saying,
I blame that on the educational system country-wise. We have lost so much. I saw it, my kid is 30-something now, but I saw it when he was educated, that it wasn't the same as PS 148, my grammar school, where they taught you stuff. We had social studies. And if they had a social study program today, wouldn't that cover the craziness that's going on?
It might. It's hard to say. I think the most important thing that you can instill in a child at an early age is the love of reading. Reading is the key to everything. If you have a good grasp of reading and you love to read and you love to learn new things, that will take you all through your life. And we're not doing that. I love to read. I would read anything. I'd even read ketchup bottles at a restaurant. Something to do.
Right. Just to keep your mind. I think I found the key with Jerry. Keeping your mind going, and that's the key to successful aging. At no matter how your mind is working at that age, it's better than not working at all.
Absolutely. You learn something new every day. For example, a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were having, I think it was our movie group, or we were having something. And one of the people in the movie group was a gentleman who was 97 years old. 97. Oh. And he was an engineer, and he was born in Germany. They got out in time before the Holocaust, and he lived here for many. He's been living in California for many years. And he said to us, we were talking. One of the guys in the movie group went to the same high school as I did in Boston. He graduated 2 years ahead of me, and we were talking about the Red Sox and baseball and all the game. And he said, I just have no understanding or what baseball is all about. And I'm just marveling at you guys. You remember all these things. You're talking about things that happened 50 years ago and you still remember them. And I said, well, back in those days, I would read the newspaper. He would read the newspapers. I would read the newspapers. They'd have all the daily, they have the batting averages of all the players. What they did the night before, and of course you'd read the paper and you could read about the stories of the other baseball teams.
Box scores.
Yeah, and you knew the standings. Now no one gets no one reads newspapers. the stuff they put on the computers don't put all that stuff on there. So you can get it, but it's a little bit different. I used to know who had the most home runs, the most RBIs, what the pitchers were doing. You had all that information, and we would discuss it. And we would discuss, of course, Boston is a great sports town. Growing up in Boston, we had great success with the franchises. The Bruins uh, would win. They've won Stanley Cups, not as many as I would like, but they had a great rivalry with the Montreal Canadiens when it was a six-team league. The Celtics and Lakers series back in those days were great, and the Celtics had great success. Uh, the Patriots weren't very good, but in the last 20 years they had great success. And the Red Sox, 86 years before they won a championship, but they won four in the 21st century, and so things were rosy in the Boston sports scene, and they have great sports town. And but things are different in different cities. Here, I always thought the Bay Area was a better pro football town than a baseball town, but the A's had won. They won six pennants and four World Series since 1970, and the Giants won four pennants and three World Championships. Actually, excuse me, they won five pennants
Let
and
me
three.
interrupt you with something. Between the A's and the Giants, how many times were the fans threatened over the years with movement?
A lot.
A lot.
The
And
Giants, the
it
Giants were going to go to when they couldn't get the San Jose Stadium. They were going to go. They were going to go to either Toronto, and that fell through, and then they were going to go to St. Petersburg, Tampa, St. Petersburg, and Bob Lurie sold it to the group headed up by Peter McGowan, and that changed their fortunes. They were able to build a stadium. That was in '93. Peter McGowan's group took over, and in 2000, their new stadium was built. The A's were ticketed for Denver at one time, and God knows where else. And it's been very, very difficult for the A's over the years.
so
The
I'm going to make a case for eminent domain.
Not a bad idea. I sent you a piece about how the cities should actually own the teams. The
Like
only
Green Bay.
Green Bay Green Bay. The city of Green Bay owns the Packers. They sold shares of stock to the community, and to raise the funds. And they have a great tradition in Green Bay. It's the smallest city in the NFL, but they do real well, and players like going there, and they've had great success. They could
Let
do this. Yeah.
Jerry, we're running short on time, but let's make that a project. Introduce at the show individually, introduce eminent domain to people. And we'll do that the next time you guest.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Okay, Ralph, I'll look into it.
Beautiful, Jerry. Thank you so much, my friend. This has
Oh,
been
it's great.
great, but they all have. I mean, 5 years of consistent podcasting, you and I, um, it's been my privilege, and I can't wait till we get together again for lunch. We could meet Duca next time, and Eric Gray, and the judge can come out.
And,
Um,
and I'll see if I can get Win German. I'm going to send out an email and see if we can get some dates in May.
Beautiful.
And then also, what would you like, or what would you like to shout out, Jerry? Anything you want to shout out or promote, or?
No, I'm just I'm right now tonight and Thursday. I'm covering the Warrior games, and the Warriors are in the play-in tournament, and they have to win two games to advance to the playoffs. And let's have a shout out to Steve Kerr and hope we can get the job done. And the Warriors have been playing better since the second half of the season. They're 20, 25, and 11. They were not playing well the first half, but they seem to have found the rotations that are working. The young kid from Indiana that they drafted, Trace Jackson Davis, has been a revelation and has just changed things. Plus the young guys Kuminga and Brandon Podzinski, rookie out of Santa Clara University. They have been terrific, and they've changed things around. So they got veterans. Moses Moody's 21 years old in his third year, playing well. And they have a chance to surprise people. And they play in the Lakers tonight in L.A., and if they can get a win, it would really boost their chances in the playoffs.
Beautiful.
There you go. Thank you again, Jerry Feidelberg. Right. Thank you. I appreciate you, and love to have you back on real soon. Okay.
Yeah. Let's hope we can get this TV thing fixed.
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
computer
We'll
fixed.
do that so that
Beautiful.
we can see you in living color.
And you can sign autographs once you get
Sure.
the TV thing going. All right, Jerry.
All right. Thanks
Okay.
again for
Take
joining
care.
us, Jerry. Appreciate you.
Be good.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So that was Jerry Feidelberg.
Wow.
There we go.
I always say that every time I hang up or complete a show and Jerry Feidelberg was on, I mean, I just marvel. 85 years old, something like that.
Right.
Jews call it seichel, brains. You still have your seichel.
Still have your seichel. Okay, so is that my word
That's
of the
your
week?
that's
Word
your
of the week?
lesson. That's your lesson. And I got to tell you, the next word you're going to learn when we talk to Steve Goldleaf and Glenn Hirsch is oy vey.
Oy vey, huh?
Oy
That's what I'm
vey.
going to learn?
Yeah, we have lost as Mets, and I consider myself part of the team. You know, it's crazy, and all fans do. We lost our 10th player off of the 1969 championship. And if you talk to any Met fan, that's the year when they were the Miracle Mets and Gil Hodges led them, who's one of the players, the manager we've lost.
Right.
And now Jerry Grody follows Jerry McMurton or McMurty and Bud Harrelson, who have passed away in the past few weeks. And I don't know if, I guess I'm getting older, of course, but mortality seems to be in every phase of it. The older I get, it's a constant friends, relatives, players.
Right.
I have to tell you, it's very depressing.
Well, that's why we have the shows that we have, is to get us through these tough times that we do.
You know, you're right. The only time I don't think about those times, generally when we're not talking about those times, is when I'm on the air. It's the happiest I am.
There you go. It looks like we have a couple people in the waiting room. We have a couple people, we'll call it the green room. We'll call it the green room because that's what we do in the comedy world.
Yes.
I know that we have Glenn joining us, and then we also have Steven. Steven looks like he doesn't have his camera on, so he must be doing something interesting. We never know what these guys are doing. Well, let's jump right in. So introduce your guest, please.
Is this Steve Goldleaf?
No, I believe that's Glenn, right? Glenn's the one that has the video.
Glenn, how are you?
And let's actually.
I haven't seen you on a video in many a moon. You're looking good. You're looking good.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
I
we
can.
hear you fine.
You're coming in
Okay,
nice.
Paul, you can hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see you. Good. We made contact.
Welcome to In the Zone. This first
Thank
time.
you very much for having me. Hey, Ralph?
Yes.
Can I call you Zig from now on?
Oh, please do. Please do.
Love that, man.
It's easier to call me Zig than Ralph.
Well, yes, easy for me too. Thank you,
Well,
man.
Glenn, let me introduce Glenn to the audience. Professional stand up comic, came from my neighborhood. We shopped at the same, you're a couple of years younger than me, but you know what I'm going to tell you. We both ate in the best bakery in Jackson Heights.
Wow, yeah.
It might have been the only bakery in Jackson Heights, but I still think, and you remember that woman who would give cookies out. Parents would go in, and they'd give cookies out. She'd give a cookie to every
Well,
kid.
yeah. Those were the days, and those were the best cookies I've ever had.
And not only were they the best cookies you ever had, it was the best community of folks that there was. We had 16 cooperative buildings in a 4-block square
Yeah, with the community, yeah. Northridge
right.
was amazing.
And
It was,
each building was an individual community, and we all met at the schoolyard.
that's true.
Tell me about the schoolyard experience for you.
Well, it was the center of the universe, is what it was. I used to tell people that you could go around the planet, you could go to the moon, but if you didn't come back and tell somebody in the park, it wasn't worth going. That was the center.
Yeah.
That's where we all met. That's where I learned most of my life's lessons.
Did you learn the lesson when we say if somebody had a date, Jamaica? That's what they did. Jamaica? Did you that the old days as kids growing up? But tell me about what you did to get into comedy.
I just grew up in that neighborhood.
It was it had to be a transition. You had an audience if you chose to take it on a regular basis. Not everybody liked you, but you got to see their reactions to you.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, again, growing up in my neighborhood, growing up with my mother and father, and coming downstairs, everybody in that neighborhood that we grew up in was a funny person. And I just chose to go into it professionally. Don't know where it started, where I made that choice, but it just seemed to happen to me. I mean, I always use my sense of humor to ingratiate myself with people and make friends. And when we played ball, I was always the guy who tried to keep everybody's spirits up. And I was always that kid in the back of the room in school who wanted the last word. And that's where it started for me. And then I got into college, and I was going to be I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And I took political science classes. I never felt comfortable in those classes. And one day my friend, one of the guys from the neighborhood, said, Glenn, he went to Queens College with me. He said, Glenn, I found this class, Easy A. I said, really? And he took me to an acting class. I walk in, kids were jumping on furniture, banging their heads against the wall. And I said, wait a minute, they're getting credit for this? I'm doing this for nothing. So that's where it began for me. And then the next 2.5 years, I did plays, and we did improv comedy stuff, and we developed a show that was shown on video at the Student Union at Queens College, and we ended up booking I think I've told you the story, Ralph.
You have, but on a different venue, and I really love to hear it again.
Yeah, okay, so we did this show. A bunch of us from the theater department got together every morning, and in those days, marijuana played a big part. Can you say that online now? Anyway, we used to do these sketches and get around and play. And one day, a couple of the guys from the television department, that's what's great about college in those days, everybody wanted to ply their trade. They got an opportunity to do it. So these guys saw us doing these sketches and kidding around the back theater. an outdoor theater we had at Queens College, and they said, you guys mind if we film you? And so we said, no problem. So they filmed us. Then they started showing these videos at the student union, and we got a little following, and we started doing shows every week that they would videotape. Then one day, one of the guys in the group came in and said he had booked us at a comedy club in Queens, the Metro. I don't know if you remember it, Zig. It was the Metro on
I
Metropolitan
don't
Avenue.
remember that.
Well, it was a really great club, and I had just seen Andy Kaufman and David Brenner at that club about 3 weeks before. I'm thinking, are they crazy? Is he crazy to book us there? Well, he booked us there, and we had no act. So we holed up in my girlfriend's house apartment, and we wrote a 20-minute show based on some of the stuff we did on stage at school. And we told everybody in the school that we were going to be there that night, Friday night, or Saturday night, whatever it might be. And that Saturday night, we packed that place with everybody we knew. We went on stage, we killed. And we got off the stage, and the owner of the club, Ep13, Epi, came over and said, "We love you. I love you guys, man. Love you to come back tomorrow."
Oh, wow.
So we came back Sunday night, or whatever the night was the next night, and we didn't tell a soul that we were doing Sunday night. So we walk into a totally strange crowd who did not know us, was not familiar with what we did.
But that's the test.
Well, that's the test, and the test we failed miserably, to the point where the two guys that were on stage with me bolted, got off the stage, left the stage. So I'm standing there by myself, thinking, I'm gonna try stuff. So I started doing like 5-10 minutes, just riffing with the crowd, and got some laughs. I got off the stage. I thought, wow, that was fun. And then that's what started. That was the germ for me. And then
Beautiful.
The next year, I just kept writing on any kind of funny thing that came up, any kind of line that I thought, and just started writing. And then 50 years later, here I am talking with you guys.
Beautiful. Hey, I'm going to segue. I'm going to bring in a fellow by the name of Steve Goldleaf. And Steve Goldleaf was one of the two people that called me or got in touch on the internet when Jerry Grody passed away. Steve is a writer. He wrote for Bill James, and he's been on this show and my previous podcast a myriad of times. I love yakking and kibitzing, and I know that you two can get together and talk about Jerry Grody. And if you would, I'd like to introduce you, Glenn Hirsch, and Paulie B. This is Steve Goldleaf.
Stephen Goldleaf joining us. Talk to us, Stephen.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Steve. He's connected.
Come in, Steve.
Hello, Steve. we see his lights are on. What's going on, Steve? There, we'll try and. So is he connected and just not with us? Well, we tried.
All right. Well,
we can talk Jerry Grody while we wait for Steve.
Yeah,
please. Why don't
if you happen to hear us, go ahead and just chime in. I have a feeling it looks like your camera and your mic are off, but you're connected to the call. So there we go.
There we go. I always thought that you were a Yankee fan primarily, and now I'm beginning to think that it's your God-given right. If you live near the 7 line, 2 stations away from Shea Stadium, you got to be a Met fan.
Well, who? You talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm a New York fan. I'm a devoted New York fan. In fact, when the Yankees and Mets played in the World Series in 2000, I believe,
right.
I left the country. I left the country because it's a good news, bad news thing. Oh, great, they scored. Oh, no, they scored. I didn't have fun at all. I'm much better if the Rangers played the Islanders, if the Knicks played the Nets in the old days. It was not fun for me. I'm devoted to the team, so I can't choose. Right now, the Yankees look great. Mets are starting to play a little better. But the 69 Mets have dug a hole in my heart for the rest of my life. And because it was an exciting time, we were all young, we were all kids, and the New York Mets came from nowhere. They had been, laughing stock in the league. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And that team was amazing, as they have been known to be called. And Jerry Grody was one of the pivotal players on that team, and in fact, he lived in Douglaston for a time, and I had a girlfriend who lived out there, and that was one of the most exciting things to know. Never met him out there, but to know that Jerry Grody lived in that neighborhood. And he played with the Mets for a long time. He's the longest. I think he's got the most games played as a New York Met catcher up even till today.
I'm going to tell you a story about Jerry Grody, and I'm going to quote Johnny Bench, who is considered the greatest catcher, blah, blah, blah. Johnny Bench said, if we ever, meaning Cincinnati, ever gets Jerry Grody, I would move to third base.
Did he really say that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He wanted to. Jerry Grody had a better arm and was a better catcher. Now, the hitting, no comparison in Bench, of course. But Grody had a great arm.
I looked at Grody's record. Didn't have much power, but you know what? He could hit.
He could hit, and he got a lot of key hits. And
well, I believe he was a 250, 260 career hitter, if I'm not mistaken. He wasn't a 210, 220, which is par for the course these days. But then, I don't know, pitches. The pitches were. I don't know. Everything's changed now. Everybody specializes now. They bring a guy in the seventh inning to pitch to two batters who hit left-handed but like to go to right field, who like to go to left field. So they bring in a guy who's a specialist there. Then guys would pitch 300 innings a year. And this guy was able to control that pitching staff of the New York Mets with, of course, Seaver and Koosman and Gentry and Ryan when he first came up, and Jim McAndrew, who, by the way, just passed away.
And I was talking to Paulie how we have lost three iconic. Well, McAndrew wasn't an iconic Met, but he was solid, and he was a Met in the 1960 on the 19.
Yeah, he wasn't iconic, but he wasn't iconic, but he was a member of that team.
Absolutely,
so that's what makes him iconic to me.
Exactly, and we've lost three, and amazingly, 10 of them.
We lost Ed Charles. You lost Tommy Agee. You lost a bunch of people.
Right, 10 of them, all told. I read.
So you go. It's not,
So that's mortality, and every day I have reason to say, "Fuck you, man, mortality. This is crazy." And my grandmother warned me about old age. If you're lucky enough to reach it, you get to see your friends, relatives, sports heroes passing away, and
well, I hope that's the case, Zig. But the aging process has changed a lot because I remember watching this movie Marty. Remember Marty with Ernest Borgnine?
Yes.
Big film in the 50s. I think he won the Academy Award. And I remember there was a line in that movie, and I saw this when I was like 15, 16 years old for the first time in the 60s. It was on television. I was staying with the movie. This is about a 40-year-old guy who's, lonely and wants to, you know the story. Anyway, he's with his aunt, right? And he's a 40-year-old guy, or his aunt, he's a late 30s, and he's complaining about, getting older and wanting to meet somebody. And his aunt says to him, Marty, what do I know? I'm an old woman. I'm 55. So things have changed. You know what
That's, I mean, I see women today that speak around 50s, even into
Yeah.
their 60s and 70s, looking good. Diet, fitness, um, just enjoying life. How our grandparents didn't have a life to enjoy. They
No,
aged.
no, no. Right. They didn't. The struggles then. I mean, we have our different kinds of struggles now. Obviously, everything is 10 times more expensive than it was 40, 50 years ago. I mean, but it was all relative, you know. I mean, a slice of pizza was 15 cents, man.
And a
You know,
Coke was 10. And we got
yeah,
it at Frank's Pizza, the best pizza. This is before Pizza Sam.
yeah,
Frank's Pizza on Roosevelt Avenue. Walk into Newtown with Marty Rose and Alan Mayer, me.
yeah. No, I get it. 90th Street, but you know, Didio's was a great pizza too on Northern Boulevard, like 83rd Street.
I don't remember Didio's. All I
Didio's,
remember was
15,
Frank's,
15
and
cents. That was my first experience.
there was a place in Flushing.
Oh,
Wow.
look at Steven's back.
Ah,
We
Hi.
got Steven. There we
Hi,
are.
Steven. Hi, I'm
Can you
Glenn
hear me,
Hurst,
guys?
Steven. Nice
Yes,
to
we
meet you.
can. Yay.
Nice to meet you. I had to
Stephen
switch
Goldleaf,
computers. I don't
Glenn
know what was wrong.
Hirsch.
Yeah,
You-
we're
I
all
have
connected.
no idea
now.
what was wrong with my other computer, but this one seems to work with the camera and the speaker.
You
So
and
it's good to
Paulie
be
are
here.
our technical guys. I'm the dolt that just sits here and talks. And
Well,
Glenn,
yeah, well, I'm with you. You know, I'm amazed I got on.
I'm amazed that you both decided to come back on my podcast. As a matter of fact, that's the biggest compliment. Steve Goldleaf left a message. I'd sure like to come on and talk about Jerry Grody. There are a lot of places you could go. He came on this show.
There you go.
Thank you, my friend.
This is one of the few places that features intelligent discussion of Mets baseball and a variety of other subjects. I have a question off the topic though. Where was this place on Metropolitan Avenue? This
On
club
Metropolitan Avenue. Are you from, Steve? You're from Queens?
I used to live a block from Metropolitan Avenue.
Yeah, Middle Village. Don't ask me specifically where it was, but Steve Epstein owned it, and it was the Metro is what it was called. Don't ask me where. Metropolitan Avenue.
The neighborhood?
Village. Metro.
Okay.
The
Okay.
Metro. Metro.
No, I got that. It was across Woodhaven Boulevard from where I lived. But
Okay, well, my stepfather lived in Middle Village, and that's pretty much how much I know about Middle Village. Even though
okay,
my,
just
my-
curious. I wondered whether I knew the place.
well, here's my area of expertise in that area stopped at Alexander's on Queens Boulevard. We didn't really cross over too much.
And Jan's ice
Yeah,
cream.
Jan's too, or Howard Johnson's.
Yes. And not the baseball player, too.
No, well, yeah, but he always came up. Every time I saw Howard Johnson, I thought of him.
Yeah, that's true. And Howard Johnson is 30-30 guy a couple of times. He is vastly underrated.
Oh yeah,
looking back.
He's I'm sure he's in the top 10 list of home run leading Met, lifetime home run hitters. I'm sure he's in there. The guy was, had a bunch of years there where he was pretty good.
Hey, I'm going to call on Steve Goldleaf to talk a little bit about Jerry Grody.
Yes, love to hear more.
Yeah, well, actually, it was very sad, of course, because we've had so many deaths recently. But Grody was somebody who I'd actually written about fairly recently, the last time I was employed by Bill James. And what I came up with was that I had noticed that I'd used the word ornery to describe two players who were very dissimilar in a lot of ways. One of them was Grody, and the other one was Dick Allen.
Yeah.
And I noted the ways in which they were almost eerily identical,
Really?
and in some ways diametric opposites. But the primary quality that united them was that they were both sort of generally disliked by their teammates. At the same time, teammates were overwhelmed with admiration for what they could do on the field and their leadership and their ability, but just had a hard time just dealing with him personally, that he was, obstreperous, and he was hard to get to know, and he was not that much interested in being, a friendly sort of guy, which was almost the opposite of someone like Jim McAndrew, who I thought was a very genial teammate, a very humble, decent person who tried just to be nice at all times. I've never seen, McAndrew, when he was interviewed, where he said anything that was in the least objectionable. But Grody was a tough guy to interview. He was a tough
Okay.
guy to be a
Wow.
teammate of. And I always liked those guys, those sort of leaders of the team, take charge guys. And that's really what I take away from Grody, that he always gave like 100% effort, and he always literally demanded that his teammates perform at the same level of intensity, of just pure focus and concentration on winning the game. No fooling around, no hijinks. And he was a leader in a way that few players, I think, gave off that impression of being team leaders.
Wow. You know what? I got to ask you though. I would never. This is the first time I've ever heard Dick Allen and Jerry Grody put in the same sentence. Now I knew that Dick Allen was a tough character, but to me, growing up there and reading about them, the New York press, they protected this side of Jerry Grody. This is the first I'm hearing from you, Steve. Fascinating.
Okay, well, I can go into a little more detail if you like. I mean, one of the things I was actually trying to write an essay just about comparing players to players, and I realized that I had this one word that I used, ornery, to describe both of them. So I decided I'm going to see if I can work out a comparison. And it turned out, well, the easiest part was they both wore the number 15. And then I realized that I'd worn the number 15 in Little League in honor of Tom Tresh. And I had a couple of run-ins with Thurman Munson, who also wore 15 for the Yankees. So immediately there was that connection for me. But the things they had in common were sort of interesting. The exact same height and weight. They both broke in the same month, September of 1963. They had almost exactly opposite skills, in that Allen was a gigantic offensive player, but not that much on defense. And he sort of just had to, play first base basically most of his career. He played all over the diamond. And Grody was a defensive wizard who wasn't all that impressive with the stick. So there were these points of similarity and difference, and I guess it was like my way of arbitrarily demonstrating that you can have an extensive conversation about almost any two players and find some points at which they coincide, and some points at which they're the exact opposite of each other. And it was that orneriness trait, though, that just really got me about Grody, that his teammates just didn't care for him that much. And in Shamsky's memoir, After the Miracle, that I wrote an extensive review of, Shamsky, basically, I don't know if you know the book at all. Did anybody have a chance to have a look at this book?
Read it.
Fantastic book, one of the best books I've read about the Mets. And what Shamsky did was he got together some of his teammates, Harrelson, Swoboda, and Jerry Koosman and himself, and they drove out to California and visited Tom Seaver when he was really in the last throes of his life. And along the way, they were just relating all these anecdotes and details. And one of the things that came up was just Grody's personality. That Swoboda told a great story about him, that Grody was I guess his wife was friends with Swoboda's wife, and he would come over to Swoboda's house and they would socialize, they would hang out, they would make a barbecue or something like that. But even there, Grody just wasn't nice to Swoboda's kids. He would, just be demanding and bossy and difficult. And he said that, he really liked Grody and Grody seemed to like him. But he just had a personality that just made it hard for him to get out of this mode of being a tough guy and a leader and all kinds of ornery. So that's
you come
that's
to a friend's house and don't like his kids and show it. That's a special kind of jerk.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, and he reminded me of one of my earlier heroes on the Mets, who was Ron Hunt. And Hunt had the same reputation. His, teammates didn't really like him. The opposing players hated his guts. And, he just maintained this position of being difficult and just a red ass with everybody he dealt with. And that was just his personality that he brought to the field. And it gave the Mets a certain kind of intensity that, made them, pick up their ears and just play really tough ball in very difficult circumstances.
Well, Hunt was their first star. He was their first All-Star. Hunt was their first All-Star, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
No, the first one chosen, and Richie Ashburn and Duke Snyder made the All-Star team before him, but they were just picked because every team needed a rep.
And Glenn, I wonder if you remember Harry the Barber, who was on Northern Boulevard.
Harry the Barber, 85th Street, Northern?
Yeah. We used to call him Harry the Butcher. But I was sitting in Harry's barbershop when I got the news, either in the paper or on the radio, that Ron Hunt was chosen, in essence, their first legitimate All-Star.
That's right.
But it was Harry the Butcher that where I was. We had a great neighborhood, I'll tell you.
I'll tell you who the Mets didn't give a chance to, and I don't know why, maybe Steve knows. Jim Hickman. He went to the Cubs. He became a freaking star for a couple of years there. I don't know why they didn't give him an opportunity in New York. He could have been helpful, I think. I mean,
Hickman was the last original Met, right? He was traded off with Hunt for Tommy Davis, who was in turn traded off for Tommy Agee. So in that sense, the Mets did get something out of
they did.
Giving up on Hickman. But Hickman had a lot of potential, and he had that one great career year in 1970 where he just tore the league apart.
Right. True. I got a great Tom Tresh story. You're an early Tom Tresh fan?
Yeah, well, I was probably 10 or 11 years old in Little League.
Me too.
And I was just choosing a number, and my brothers chose number 9 for Maris, and my friend chose number 7 for Mantle, and I was just left with Tom Tresh.
Well, here's my story about Tresh. I think I told Zig this. Same thing. I'm at a Yankee game. I'm like 10 years old, and I'm sitting behind the third base dugout. Tom Tresh is up. Hits this screeching line drive foul, heading right for my face, and would have hit me in the face if not for the woman sitting in the seat in front of me, who took it in the forehead, and they had to carry her out. Years later, I'm talking 40 years later, my friend is going to a Yankee camp, one of these, dream camps, when you go and you play with some of the pros and
fantasy camp.
Yeah, fantasy camp. I tell my friend who I was playing softball with the story. He says he's going to this fantasy camp. He goes, comes back home 2 weeks later, slips me a baseball. I look at it. It says on the baseball, it's written, "To Glenn, sorry I missed, Tom Tresh."
That's a great story.
Yeah, I still have it here. It's on my shelf.
Wow.
I didn't tell you that story. Zig? Yes.
Well, there was a time when Tresh came up before he was injured, where he competed. He was terrific. Wow.
Wow.
Nice.
There
Nice.
it
Oh, wait, hold on. Show us again because I was. There we go. Show us again. It'll show us again. Oh, there it is. All right.
Nice. Nice.
You know, Zig, I went to one of those fantasy camps.
With which team?
No, it was with Carol Doda. And so it was a totally different fantasy camp. Oh, well, never mind. We'll go back to the show. Sorry.
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
San Francisco, it's a different league out here.
Yeah,
Well,
I think Paul
if
wants
you ever see Seinfeld, Kramer
Yeah.
does a thing about going to a fantasy camp and punching Mickey Mantle and decking him. And that is one of their incredible episodes. And now that we're on comedy, I have two comedians right here. I got to give Larry David, who is ending his show. He's the best playwright going. Comedy writer. Norman Lear in
Yeah,
retrospect.
I know Larry a long time. I know Larry from the improvisation way back when, in the mid '70s till now, and yeah, he's done pretty well. But you know, he's not too far from the human being that Larry David really is. So you know, he just follows himself around. And you want to talk ornery, Steve? That's a good word for Larry David too. In a lot of
Yep.
ways.
He's certainly obstreperous.
Yeah, there's another good word.
Yeah. But you know, in his little setup, when he faces the world, he's right a lot. He's
Yeah, well, yeah. He says what he wants to say, and a lot of people, I guess, would like to say the same things. It showed me watching that show how a lot of people view the world, that they feel trapped and can't say what they want to say. And Larry David has given himself, and in essence, the Seinfeld character too, and those characters, license to say and do whatever they want.
Well, that's
And,
what
you know,
that's
isn't
what's
that freedom?
isn't that a great thing about comedy, Glenn? Is that it's a give and take. We're all just want that connection. We all want to be related to. And
Yeah, it's true, but you know, it's a dangerous time these days. You could be canceled. I hate to use that freaking word for saying one thing wrong. I mean, it's just or what most people perceive as wrong. I mean, you know, where's the freedom?
yeah, I
Comedy is
came
to
from
me,
the
it's dangerous.
I
It's dangerous.
graduated from the school of George Carlin. I always
Oh,
go to that line.
well-
I always go to that line and then I cross it.
Go over it.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
well,
have to.
That's brave. That's very brave. Carlin was brave. We could use him today.
Yes.
It's a shame he's not around, but you know, it's different. I don't know how young comedians get started anymore. Plus, there's 10,000 probably living in my building right now.
Probably.
Well,
And
if
they're
you're,
all on the
anyone's a
open mic
fan
list.
of, I'm sorry, if anyone's a fan of Larry David, you might want to check out this terrific podcast with Jeff Garlin and Susie Essman, where they're doing a history of the show episode by episode, and they've just finished season 1, and it's full of insight about comedy, about improv, about Larry David. It's really just a great podcast.
I've
Maybe it's
seen them
me.
do
Maybe-
that, and they are great together.
Yeah, maybe it's me. I know Jeff. I know Susie from way back when. I don't know. I know my history, and yes, that's interesting to me to break down the shows. That would be fun to listen to. I did the same thing with Will and Grace. I don't know. They have the same kind of podcast where they break down a show a week and talk about what it was, and they bring on guests from that show. It's fascinating. That's what podcasts are interesting to me. Yes, good idea.
And this one, of course, you must admit.
Oh yeah, and this one, of course.
Of course.
We'll have to do a
With the
podcast
same
about this podcast.
logical problem. of people interrupting each other all the time. I mean, that because the whole thing is unscripted. So Susie Essman and Jeff Garlin are talking over each other, are interrupting, or bringing up irrelevant subjects that the other one doesn't want to talk about. The whole dynamic is kind of fascinating, and it goes on. It has this one focus of dissecting an episode at a time. It's kind of fascinating if you're interested in the nuts and bolts of what makes a comedy show.
Yeah, I might give it a listen. Thank you. That's cool.
Do you know what the name of it is, by any chance?
Yeah, I think it's called A History of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay.
But I'm sure you can just Google, Essman and Garland and Curb.
And podcasts. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Hey, what do you remember most about Jerry Grody? And I'll start with you, Stephen.
Well, the one thing I remember about him specifically as a player that impressed the hell out of me was that he would run, and I mean run, out of the catcher's little place behind the plate anytime there was a ground ball to the left side of the infield. And this was just to back up an errant throw. And the amount of hustle that he put into this, I've never seen from any other catcher. That he would just take off faster than he'd ever run. And I never actually saw him catch an errant throw, but he just went down there every time there's a ground ball to third base or shortstop. And that was the kind of leadership by example, I think, that I'm talking about, that he just told his teammates, there is nothing I won't do that I'm physically capable of doing on the field, and I expect the same from you. And of course, he was notoriously competitive with his pitchers. And Jim McAndrew, may he rest in peace, didn't have much of a fastball. And Grody would frequently get really pissed off at him and would throw the ball back to him just to hurt his hand, just to show him that he had to throw the ball faster, and that he had to put more effort into it. And that was his relationship with the pitchers, that he would essentially be antagonistic to the pitchers during the game and in the clubhouse, and for all I know, at social events, just to get them on edge and to make them feel I have to show Grody that I can come up to his standard of competitiveness. And that's what he did. He just impressed me no end with his effort and his leadership.
Do you know his relationship with Seaver?
Well, he tried it with everybody, I'm sure. I mean, he definitely intimidated the rookies. I mean, Gary Gentry in '69 also would get the same treatment from Grody. He just was never give in an inch and always try harder.
Now, there's an interesting guy, Gentry. Did he get hurt? Because he wasn't around too long, but I thought he was going to be something special. Did he hurt his arm? And maybe today he could have Tommy John and he'd be around like Koufax would have been around if he was pitching today. They could have fixed him up. What happened with Gentry? Do you know, Stephen?
Well, I mean, he did end up with a sore arm. We traded him to the Atlanta Braves, and he didn't really. He was okay with the Braves, I think, in 1971 or 72, and then he just fizzled out. He just, I guess, came.
Yeah, but it's arm trouble, isn't it? I mean, it's arm trouble. They let these guys pitch so much. Now they let them pitch three. Now they had to make a rule that they have to pitch at least 30 pitches, and they come in. I mean, the classic game between Marichal and Spahn, the 15-inning game where they both pitched all 15 innings, and Spahn only struck out two guys. They all threw over 300 pitches, and Mays hit that bottom of the 15th home run. And the game was over 1-0. But that could never happen today. It's insane. These guys all pitched over 300 innings. Now nobody does that anymore, and never will again.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing about Gentry, though, is that he was actually furious at Gil Hodges because he complained that Hodges wouldn't leave him in the game as long as he left Seaver and Koosman, and he got screwed out of a lot of victories. He said he basically he complained that he'd pitched as well as Seaver or Kuzman during the 1969 season, but he didn't win all the games because Hodges always took him out at some point when he would get in trouble, where he would leave Seaver or Kuzman in there. So Gentry was actually campaigning to be left in games longer.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
he said that that was something he held against Hodges, which I think is just conceit on Gentry's part, because you look at his numbers and he just wasn't quite the pitcher that Seaver or Kuzman were.
But he did win, I believe, 12 games that year. I think.
Yeah.
I think he won 12 games. And, if you take it out of games that he thought he could win, I don't know. I see that as, wanting to pitch more. And you're right. Hodges knew what he was doing. That's for sure. But, I just think that the injuries were what screwed some of these guys up, because they did push them too much then. And
well,
today,
look at the injuries today.
Yeah, right. With the injuries today, even with all the craziness that they can do and all the operations and the workouts, still, I don't know. Maybe these guys are throwing too hard. You know what I mean? It's all velocity now. You got to pitch 97. If you hit 95, it's not good enough anymore. So these guys are all trying to overthrow, and it happens. I mean, Cole, Burns, or whatever is the guy on Cleveland. I mean, it's just, and they pay him so much money. I don't know. You would think they know more than me. I'm just an outsider looking in.
Hey, Stephen, excuse me a second, Glenn.
Sure.
Something just hit me. I follow you on Facebook, of course, Stephen, and you made a statement a couple of weeks ago that really stuck in my craw. You haven't watched a professional game in years. Am I correct?
Well, I haven't watched a contemporary game in years. I've watched a lot of games, from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s on YouTube, but I've just stopped following baseball almost entirely at this point.
Wow. Why?
Well, that's what my question is. Why?
Like to know.
Well, I guess they've made changes over the years, starting, I would say, in 1973 with the designated hitter. And I said, okay, well, then I'm not going to watch the American League. I just don't really care for that brand of baseball. And I didn't really pay attention to the American League in the first place. I'm a National League fan, so that wasn't much of a sacrifice. And over the years, I think I've just seen more and more of the game just introduce these elements. I mean, I would say the single stupidest element is the ghost runner on second base.
I agree 100%. That's freaking softball. Bullshit. I hate that.
I turn off extra inning games. I will not. I mean, it skews the record book. Who do you credit the run to?
Yeah.
Who do you ERA?
No, it's not. It's ridiculous. You got to earn every freaking base. That's where I come from.
Yeah.
I mean, and that kind of, you're right, Stephen. That's number one for me too. Stupid.
And I'm saying I've just had so many of these changes. That's the worst. But I think there were probably about 10 changes that have been introduced over my lifetime that degraded the game to the point where I'm saying, it's not really baseball. I just don't enjoy watching it, and it just frustrates me and irritates me.
That's funny. I feel the same thing about rock and roll,
I'm just
guys. I feel the same thing about rock and roll.
Games that I enjoyed, and there's no shortage of them. There's a lot of baseball, throughout history. Even way before I was zygote, that is interesting to me. And I'm working on a couple of books now that have to do with baseball over the course of its history from the very beginning. And so in that sense, I would say I'm still a baseball fan. It's just not contemporary baseball that I follow at all.
Well, you mentioned getting baseball, old vintage baseball on YouTube. There's more radio than television on YouTube for old games. And I have to call attention, when we were kids, we had in the same booth Red Barber, Mel Allen, and Phil Rizzuto. Nothing tops that. And I could go to a YouTube radio game every night of the week. Chicago, they're playing Baltimore, whatever, and I can be enthralled by just the pace of the game, their knowledge. It was a privilege with those three in the booth.
Yeah, those are the Yankees. But you know what? With the Mets, I mean, with Kiner and Nelson and Bob
Murphy.
Yeah.
Bob Murphy, those guys, in my head, when I hear them, it's classic to me, and it brings back a whole time in my life hearing those guys. They were wonderful. They were.
It's
the guys today,
transcendent.
well, Steven doesn't watch that much, but guys today are good. They talk a lot, and yeah, they talk too much sometimes.
Okay, I can't ask Steven this, but I'll ask you, Glenn. How has the game changed for the better?
Well, the offense, in terms of the offense, the pitching is better, but again, I think they're making these guys compete against each other, not playing against the team anymore. They're competing against the pitcher, the other pitcher. So each one's got to throw 95, 97, 99. A guy's cutting, throwing a cutter, throwing anything that can really do damage to an arm. These guys, they've thrown caution to the wind because they all want to make the team. Guys get cut if they walk a guy the next day, they could be DFA'd. It's amazing to me how weak that game has become in that sense, where guys have to prove themselves. Maybe it always was. They have to prove themselves every at bat, every freaking pitch. It's you never know who's going to be with you.
Okay.
In terms of better, more speed in the game, I guess.
The athleticism
More athletes, yes, for each position, and I guess more home runs being hit.
I like the versatility. Guys can come up and play in any position.
Yeah, that's true, and they want to make the team, and it's all about money. So these guys, they want to make sure that these guys who they keep on the bench can play 3-4 positions. And that's where it's at. To me, maybe it's my naivete, but I don't see that much of a difference. I mean, for Steven, it's a different story. I kind of like the DH. I didn't like the fact that the National League had it and the American League didn't. So when they made, I'm a purist, so I want them to be the similar. I don't like interleague play. I don't like that. So these are the negatives for me. I don't like seeing the Mets and Yankees play in the middle of the season. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But am I changing it? No. So I try to adapt.
Okay.
That's for me.
Well, I was actually operating on an even larger principle of I like watching, and this goes for all sports, a defensive game. I like a low-scoring game in almost every sport, and I find that what's happened in every single sport is there's been an attempt to get more offense and more scoring into the game because I guess that's more popular with the average fan. So I've been opposing this all my life. That when they introduce something that makes a typical baseball game have a score like a football game, and it's 16-7, I'm saying, yeah, that's really not interesting to me. Much more interested in the defensive side of the game. And as I'm saying, this goes on across the board in all sports, and I've kind of lost my interest in sports generally for that reason. But going back to the YouTube thing, that I find that when I watch the games from 15, 60 years ago, I'll see things that I didn't notice at the time. And one of the things I want to talk about, Ralph, on a future podcast, because we're not going to get to it today, is I was kind of amazed. I was watching the 1969 World Series the other day, and I had a chance to analyze Bud Harrelson's defense. And I never really thought about this before at the time, but that man had a throwing arm like you would not believe. He
Really?
would throw out runners that you would say, well, that's an infield hit. That, there's no way that he, he's going to get the ball over to first base. And he would nab him by just a half a step. And he would do this consistently. I'm looking at it and go, wow, I knew he was a wonderful defensive player, but the fact is that his one strongest point was that he had probably the best throwing arm I've ever seen on a Met shortstop, and that includes Ray Ordonez and Lindor and all of these other guys who may have had more range and may have had softer hands, but that was one quality that Harrelson had that I watched this whole career and I never really picked up on. So there's no end of the interest in old games, that you can always learn something and you can always find something out about players that you'd never noticed before, and that's really the main entertainment part of watching the older games on replays on YouTube.
Wow.
All right. Wow, guys, we are in extra innings. We are over. We're getting there. Since we have Stephen Goldleaf on screen, give us your plugs, your shameless plugs. Tell us what you're doing, what you got going. We know you got a couple books going on there. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, well, actually, I was just writing to a friend of mine, Rob Nyer, who was asking me that same question. I told him that I'm almost paralyzed at this point, literally, because I've got so many projects going on. I don't even know which one to work on first. But the baseball related ones are I'm trying to accumulate the best of my Bill James articles, so that I'm working on this one compilation called Tracers that essentially goes through the written accounts, usually by ex-ball players, of their playing career, and I compare them to what actually happened. And I find it's astonishing how often players will misrepresent something that happened in their careers and give a version of it that bears no resemblance to reality. And it's often very educational to see this, because the things that they get wrong are always self-aggrandizing. It's always, Joe Cronin writes that he hit 3 triples in a game, and you go through the record and you see, yeah, he never did that. But this is like Joe Cronin wrote about his greatest memory in baseball was the time he hit 3 triples in a game against the Yankees. And you go through the record and you see, no, never did that, never even came close to hitting 3 triples in a game. It's sort of, to me, fascinating to set the record straight. So I've done this with about maybe 30 or 40 incidents, and that's when I'm hoping that I can just whip that into shape and get that one out there.
Hey, I want to interrupt a second. You mentioned your friend is Rob Nyer. Rob wrote a book that I must go to 2 or 3 times a week. It's called The Lineups. He did it for pitchers too, and in another book.
The big book of lineups, and
it was absolutely great. Every year you see what your franchise, how it evolved, and I love that book. So tell him thank you, and if he ever wants to plug that book on my network or my show, whatever, I'd love to do it. Just to compliment
I'll
him.
mention that he just stopped his podcast. He did this podcast for Saber, and he did this for like 10 years, and he just ended the podcast.
Put him
So
with me.
I'm sure he has.
Put him with me, and I'll give him his withdrawal from it. Okay. Hey,
if he ever feels the need.
We want to
Sure.
thank you both. Glenn, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, Glenn, please give us your plugs and shout outs and whatever you got going on, and I'm trying to bring back your video.
Tomorrow I have a dental appointment at 2:30, and that I'm not looking forward to. And I'm also starting to write a book about my life called Peanuts on the Bar, a stand-up life, and just accumulating stuff. Got a couple of smaller shows. I'm not searching for it anymore. I got tired of the road after 47 years. So if I never see another airport or a plane or a hotel again, it would be too soon.
No more little bars of soap for this guy.
Hey, Glenn, one more thing. How's your daughter's career going?
Doing great. She's got 2 songs coming out with a bunch of bands. My daughter's a songwriter, and she is working with a bunch of pretty popular artists that I'm not at liberty to say right now because the music hasn't come out yet. It'll be out on the 19th, one song, another one on the 25th. And, the music industry has changed too, just like baseball has changed. And so I'm learning all about that. But she's doing great. Thanks for asking, Zig. And you should talk with her one day. Sit down and talk with her. It'd be interesting.
Come on together again.
From a young point of view.
We had her on together at one time. And,
yes, a couple of years ago. So invite her back. I want you guys to know that I'm delighted to have you guys, and I hope you'll be a regular as Stephen is turning in to be on this show, Glenn. Well, here's the deal. I hope I love talking with you, but I don't want it to be because some old Met died that we get together.
Right.
Yeah, well, get used to it because it's going to happen more and more.
I get it. It's
well, you know what's better? What could be worse if an old Met fan dies?
Yeah, well, those are happening every minute too.
I'm happy. I'm happy.
We can discuss them. What was it, 2 million that they got in '69? We got to have at least half of them still around.
Right. Right. Hey, thank you guys.
Thank you.
And we're about to lose your video. We haven't been able to switch to your video for about 3 minutes, and I'm worried that we're gonna even lose your audio because of inactivity on the screen. But wow, Zig, I've enjoyed this. So again, give it up.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Steve.
No, thank you. And again, give it up for Stephen Goldleaf and Glenn Hirsch, everybody. All right.
Right.
Thank you
for
guys.
Hanging
in there,
Thank
guys.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Always
We're going to
fun.
wrap up our show. We're literally just about there. Look at your audience and tell them what you got going on next week. Do you know what's going on next week?
Next week is a vacation week.
Ooh, vacation. Where are we going?
Well, we did 13 shows.
Right.
I've gone through a bunch of moving and relocating and changing my life.
Right.
I need a week of vacation.
So are we going to go get sip Mai Tais on a beach somewhere? You and I.
Oh my aching heart. That just if it comes to that, I want you to know I'm gonna pull the plug on myself. But
okay, so next week, no Zig in the Zone. So
no Zig in the Zone.
We'll maybe play a greatest hits of Zig in the Zone or something. We'll do something. And then we'll come back the week after with all these great guests that you got.
Absolutely.
Man, for myself, the Zig Man.
We have some good guests, Paulie.
We do, bud.
Every week we have interesting, passionate people with opinions, and they're not opinionated.
There you go.
And that makes for a good podcast.
It really does. And so if you guys want to check out everything that Zig does, check out the Comfortably Zoned Network on YouTube. You can also check out Comfortably Zoned on Facebook or wherever podcasts can be seen and heard. So,
absolutely. Man,
love you, Zig.
I love you, and I love the people that we're attracting. I get feedback every day that really warms the cockles. The cockles. My dog likes the cockles. All right, guys. Okay. We're out. Until next time, me and the Zig Man are out of here. We'll see you on In the Zone. Thank you, everybody.